All right, let's go ahead and get started. We're about 7-8 seconds late. All right, so we're going to talk about med jacking today. It's very exciting. It's been in the news a lot lately, as we've all seen and read. It's not just a theory anymore. It used to be that people would conjecture about it, but we have multiple proof of concepts already done. Just wanted to go through a few disclaimers so we're on the same sheet of music. But first, thanks for everybody coming out. We appreciate it. And like people have said earlier, please visit the vendors. Now, this is my opinion only. This is not representative of my employer. I prepared this in my personal capacity. And we've all seen this before, haven't we? This is for entertainment and educational purposes only. Don't hack other people's stuff. They won't appreciate it. And if you do, shame on you. It's not the con's responsibility. What we're going to talk about today is applicable as of today. There are other programs out there that are starting to implement some of the security with these. What we're going to talk about today is not a guarantee of future security incidences. Hopefully everything will be patched and everything will be rosy. Probably won't be, but that's all right. This is the latest one I put in. It's illegal to hack anything without the owner's authorization. It can also be illegal, or it can be considered terrorism, which means you'll probably go to jail. And we don't want to see you on the news at night. This is me. You can tell I've been in school way too long. Presently work as a cybersecurity lab engineer. Those are my emails. Please feel free to email me later if you have any questions or if there's anything else you want to go over. There's my Twitter account that has most of my blog posts and other thoughts. Like I said, if you have any questions, please contact me later. We have an obligation to make this a better place, a more secure place for people to work in and go on the internet on. As the illustrious yet distinguished Chris Roberts said this morning, blue has to win. We have to collaborate and work together to make it a better place. I also have a more in-depth version of this and paper with all the references. Just quick thought for the day. Remember, trig is a sign of the times. Well, I got nothing with that. How about an ARP request goes to McDonald's, asks for a Big Mac. That's, sorry. One of those days. Okay, so of all the topics to talk about, I chose this one. And it's because my father-in-law was riding his motorcycle one night and he got in a car accident and he hit a car. So they take him to the hospital and they discover he has a cardiac problem. So they install a pacemaker, and it just happens to be a St. Jude pacemaker, St. Jude medical pacemaker. And everything was fine, and he feels better than ever, big happy smiley face, and all of a sudden there was a recall. So he had to go back in, and then everything wasn't so pleasant. So what we're doing is we're implanting these devices in our bodies that are insecure, that could potentially kill us. And there hasn't been an amount of oversight necessary to remediate this. Now, this is for research only. One of the items we'll talk about is the MedSec and St. Jude medical lawsuit. We'll talk about some other devices also. But my father-in-law is still alive. I'm not in his will, and you won't see me on one of the Dateline shows saying, I didn't do it, I'm innocent. This is what we're going to talk about today is applicable to any device that's implanted externally or internally that communicates wirelessly. Now we have the pacemakers and defibrillators, IV pumps, that's the blue machine, and insulin pumps, and other connected equipment. Curiously, with the insulin pump in the lower left, the clamshell device here, that communicates wirelessly to the pump itself. There's a little piece here that's not real clear that does the actual communication. So that's one of the attack points with the apparatus. Unification. Obviously, these are two pieces, totally different pieces of equipment. The pacemaker's on the top, and obviously the car is on the bottom. And there's a pacemaker going around that you can take a look at. The commonality is these both communicate wirelessly, and that's one of our attack points. The security that's in place with these, it's mostly with two different options. It's not in place at all, or it's woefully inadequate. It can be, the messages and the PHI can be sent over clear text or with poor encryption. And, you know, you wonder why. Here are the engineers who are producing these pieces of equipment. They keep us alive. Why are we having all these problems still? And there seems to be a lack of understanding. You know, you may get the question, well, what exactly is cybersecurity? Or what does this get me? And, you know, the big one is, well, this impairs my timeline. I've also been told that cybersecurity is nothing more than a speed bump. So there needs to be a change in our thoughts and our mentality with this. Let's see, this is an issue for the manufacturers, and they're very aware of it. This is not something new. They've been manufacturing these devices for years. They're sold across the planet. This, like I said, nothing new with that. They're lacking a preparedness with security with the products. They're not addressing what they need to with the security. And this is evidenced by the number of vulnerabilities that continue to show themselves that should have been addressed long ago. And the vulnerabilities keep coming. It's not ceasing. Ponymon did a survey in 2017, and the results were only 17% of the manufacturers were actually addressing this. So if you count off for 6 people, only one of those persons is representative of a manufacturer who is willing to put the time and effort into securing them. The different models, for each manufacturer, there's different models that they make. There isn't just one per manufacturer. These are widely used. Teachers, engineers, mechanics, politicians, diplomats. It's wide-ranging. With the compromise, when there's a compromise, there's several issues with that. There can be an unauthorized access to the PHI for the person. At times these devices hold that. And also it's a HIPAA violation, which can be very expensive. They may be able to write the check, but depending on the violation, it can get expensive for them. The hardware sample, one is going around. I contacted a nurse at a hospital, 8 manufacturers. I called and emailed them. Medical device sales rep, 2 cardiologists, and 4 funeral homes, and a partridge in a pear tree. I wasn't able to get any samples from these people. And one reason was the cost. They run about $40,000 per unit. And also, you know, you have somebody calling on the phone, hey, do you have any extra pacemakers laying around? It's not a question you usually get. And also HIPAA compliance. On some of the units, there's serial numbers, which you can use to get this private information. But I was able to get the one that's being passed around on eBay. You know, what can't you buy on eBay these days? You can buy cars and everything else. It's not used. It's a display model, so you won't get zapped as it's going around. I promise. Just a little history. From 1990 to 2000, there was over 114,000 recalls on these devices. 2001, 25 million devices had been implanted. 2005 was the first death noted. 21-year-old, their pacemaker malfunctioned. So instead of getting a shock to get their heart back in rhythm, it malfunctioned and shorted. 2006, half of the devices in use were using software, so you can see the advancement. They're becoming more complex at that point in time. 2008, some of the vulnerabilities began to be noted. So the manufacturers started to think, oh, there could be a problem with this. Let's look into it. 2010-11, hospitals were closed due to had to close their cardiac cath units due to malware. 2011, it started to spread, and they started to look at insulin pumps and the problems with those. 2012, Barnaby Jack gave a presentation on hacking a pacemaker and delivering a shock in Australia. Let's see. 2014 to 16, more security research had been done on this. The FDA in 2016 started to get more involved with their guidance because they saw there was a problem coming along with this. Researchers at a university in 2016 researched 9 different ICDs, the pacemakers and the defibrillators, and they focused more on the RF, the wireless communication, and they used very cheap and easily accessible equipment to do the research to compromise these. And they were able to drain the batteries and transmit commands to the devices, which is a bad thing for the person with the device. Lastly, 2016, Johnson & Johnson had an issue with their Animas wireless insulin pump. They had informed over 114,000 doctors and patients that there were 3 vulnerabilities with this. So that's not a good thing. Normally how the process works is the device retrieves the data, makes little adjustments. It could be to increase, decrease the baseline amount of medicine. If you need a shock, gives you a shock, what have you. These allow you to have remote access. You can't have somebody walking around with a USB port, sticking out of their chest wall. It's not a good look. It's not fashionable. It's also dangerous. So the updates are delivered OTA, over the air, to these. And generally, it's a confidential process. It should be. So the data is encrypted in some fashion going out and coming in, which reduces the potential for a compromise. Worst case scenario. Now, this was on a TV show, but as I noted, these are used through society: mechanics, teachers, professors, diplomats, CEOs, C-level, everybody. So let's say you have somebody coming in for a meeting, and let's say you want them to stop using oxygen. If you attack the device, and I'll show you, you can do that up to 50 feet away plus. What you can do is deliver them a shock or disable it, so if they need it, it's not there for them to have, and they can pass on. So one morning I was watching Law and Order, right? And a quote I got from that was, the old crusty DA said, "I have no problem with science. I just wish it would give the law time to catch up." So if you switch out InfoSec with science, it's more applicable to us. Most of the legislators are attorneys, poli-sci majors, and they really don't know much about what we do. They know what they do know is from the headlines, sound bites, and what the contributors tell them. The wheels of justice move incredibly slow. They, as you know from in school, going over the civics lessons. It's a very templated process, and it's intentionally slow. Now, InfoSec, on the other hand, moves rather rapidly. At times we have changes per week, per day. And our framework, because the environment isn't overly defined. The FDC, they've gotten more involved with this because of the security that has not been applied. The manufacturers need to understand a few things. That not only the device and what it's supposed to do, but also the hazards involved. They need to define the risks. They can be, filling out the TERA forms, the DFEMAs, and various other forms and processes that aren't being done and applied to the devices. They need to focus on the tech of what they're building. And they need to be proactive, not reactive. This is applicable, like I mentioned, to other equipment. It's not just the pacemakers. It's the insulin pumps, like I showed you earlier. With some of the devices, you can have the unauthorized access. You can put in commands with that. They can hurt and kill people. Let's see, and just recently, over 465,000 pacemakers were recalled by the FDA. They were manufactured by St. Jude Medical, who's now owned by Abbott Labs. 2015, another infusion pump, but this time the pump was compromised through the hospital network. 2013, Barnaby Jack, and you saw the name earlier, he was supposed to give a presentation at a certain security conference in Vegas. His hack was that he could compromise the ICD from 50 feet away. He passed the night before, so he wasn't able to deliver the presentation, but that is a viable attack at this point. So, St. Jude Medical lawsuit. MedSec found 7 vulnerabilities with the equipment. The end result is they could drain the batteries, force the heartbeat faster, or simply turn it off. And there were other attacks with it. They published their results on August 25th of last year. Naturally, St. Jude Medical was not happy with them, so they contracted with U of M. U of M's report said their research was wrong, it was flawed, and they could find no evidence of the vulnerabilities. And so instead of just leaving it alone, St. Jude Medical thought, well, it'll be a good idea for us to pile on. And so their statement was their testing methods were flawed. They were using outdated software when they were doing the test, and they simply didn't understand medical device tech. I call this an example of poking the bear. And so this further excited the other parties. St. Jude Medical went on to sue Muddy Waters, their subsidiaries and associated companies, along with the principals of the companies. Their cause of action, and you can look up the lawsuit online, was they were publishing false information, it was a conspiracy, and it was also defamation. In the response, the defense was simply the truth. They did their report, everything is well documented, no surprises in the report, all they had to do was read through it. And there was not malice involved because they actually tried to work with them. It's notable that U of M was, in this case, incorrect. They were using an alternative truth, and they were just simply wrong. SJM, St. Jude Medical, that's right, U of M, St. Jude Medical was also named in a separate lawsuit as a defendant because of their lack of application of security. It got so bad the FDA had to threaten them if they didn't do a recall and address the lack of security. Now I'm not going to read this, but the bottom line is in the second bullet point, an independent lab looked at it, just so you could have a third party looking at what's going on with the process. And they said the device does not meet the security requirements of a system responsible for safeguarding life-sustaining equipment implanted in patients. Which means if this is in you, it's a good chance you might die because of it. Insecurity. Okay, so MedSec, this wasn't a quick report. Granted, as the equipment's going around, you can see it's a small piece. That's what's implanted. There's also a base unit, which is, not big, and there's also a programmable device that sits in a doctor's office. But they researched the equipment for 18 months. They found there was a lack of strong authentication. The commands can be issued from up to 10 feet normally and up to 30 meters with an antenna. Why somebody would need to be 30 meters away from their base station for their equipment for an update's beyond me, but that's another story. So the authentication was poor. There was a fixed coded override with it. And then looking at this as we go through it, Facebook has a stronger encryption for your dog and cat pictures than they had for this equipment that'll save your life or can kill you. With the equipment itself, there was no protection for the equipment or anything to make it tamper resistant. So you can go on eBay, you can still go on eBay, I checked yesterday, buy all the equipment, open it up, and take a look at everything you need to do a nice recon on it. The name of chips on it, everything's labeled. You can just go to Dr. Google and look everything up you need to start with the attack on the equipment. With this information, you can reverse engineer the chips. And like I said, it's amazing what you can find out there on Google with this, with anything. They were able to gain root on the equipment. The base station that the pacemaker communicated to wasn't encrypted. You could go online and look up all the security information on it without a problem. And the screenshot is their evidence of them getting root. To communicate with it, you only needed the IMD, and that's the ID that's on the bottom of the base unit. Now here's the Zarlink chip that's in the equipment, that's in the base unit, not in the pacemaker. Anybody can go online and review the data sheet on this. And if you look at it, and this is nice for reverse engineering. If you look at it, all the information is already, that's a little fuzzy, but it's printed on the tops of the chips. No effort was made to obscure it so that, anybody going on eBay can buy it and review what they needed to get started working on it. And yesterday, I thought, well, I'll just get an update. So yesterday I went online and some of the manuals for the Zarlink chip are still out there. And you can see from the table of contents some of the areas that are present that you would use to do the reverse engineering, unfortunately. Now the programmers at the doctor's office, which programs the base unit that you have at your house, were not adequately secured. The hard drive in those, you could just pop it out and pull the data and the information from it. They weren't even encrypted. Just need a simple cable that you can buy on Amazon. With the code review, they only did it on a part of the code. They just didn't run it on the full program's code, which is a problem. The FDA eventually confirmed MedSec's findings. And in January this year, St. Jude Medical issued the press release that they'd be pushing the patches. With this, several potential attacks with the commands that you can send to the equipment. You can have repeated electrical shocks to the heart. So at Christmas time, when your uncle acts up, you can just get on your laptop and give him a couple zaps to get him back in line. But don't do that. They can reconfigure the device so it doesn't deliver a shock when the patient needs it, so they would die. And also with the Maximo DRVVE DDR, which is another pacemaker, you can wirelessly attack that. You can have a replay attack. And so I don't leave you with, oh, there's a problem. This is how you can break it. There are several things that need to be done. The manufacturers need to be proactive, not reactive. They need to treat the device like the enterprise. You need authentication. You need even simple protocols, something. Just don't have the information going from the equipment. Limit the communication range. The patients are told any updates, and when it pulls the data from the pacemaker, it'll be at night when you're sleeping. There isn't a need to have the base unit out by the street away from your house. It's supposed to be by the bedside, so there's no need to have such a wide communication range with that. There shouldn't be any back doors left with these. DevOps, yes, that's great for them, but when it goes into production, you don't need that. They need to put themselves in the shoes of the developer. Secure the hardware. Obscure the chips. Don't make it so easy for anybody just to go on Google and look up the information they need. And, especially the manual. Remove the debugging options with the chips. And that's pretty much it. That's just me again. Like I said, if you have any questions, feel free to email me. I'll get right back to you. Thank you for your time.